Welcome back everybody to this video series where we are looking at creating a Lambda extension from scratch. We've done quite a lot at this point in terms of the extension. We've registered it with the extensions API. We've written and created our server that will listen for Lambda metrics that are sent by the Lambda service. So now what we're going to do is we are going to subscribe to events so that we handle the lifecycle events better in our workflow. So in order to do that, we have to register with the telemetry API specifically. And in order to do that, it's going to need two things. It's going to need the extensions ID that we get in this step, and also it's going to need the URL that it's supposed to send these metrics to, which we return in this step. So essentially what I'm saying is we're going to have another step, we're essentially going to have another step here where we say that we subscribe the extension for events, from Lambda. Okay, cool. That's what we're going to do here, but obviously we're going to do it in a separate file, and in that file we're going to make some API calls that allow us to register. So what I'm going to do is in here I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to call it telemetry. I'm going to call it telemetry API, and let me just close these off for now because they're kind of distracting. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to import fetch from node fetch, similar to what we did with the extensions API. And in here we're going to have a single method. It's going to be quite a lengthy one, so we're going to say const subscribe, make it async, and obviously it's going to be an arrow function. And when this gets called, I'm just going to say info, just tell where we are in terms of, so here we are subscribing to telemetry API. That's what we're doing here. Cool. Now we're going to have to create a payload here, and I'm going to call it subscription. And it's going to have a couple of things. It's a very sensitive one, this, so I'm going to have to be as accurate as I can. So the schema version of the API that we're using is from 2022 07-01, and the destination. And so by destination, what we mean is and this has to do with the URL that it'll send, it'll send metrics to. Oh, that almost didn't come out fine. So, and essentially what we're going to have here is what we call listener URL. And as you've guessed, it's going to come from where we call this function here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say listener URL here. And this obviously is the same as this. Oh, sorry. Just do that. Okay, the protocol will be HTTP, like so. Then we're gonna have to do okay, separate that with a comma. Okay, cool. Now, what are we registering for? We're registering for platform, and we're registering for function, right? Essentially what we're telling the telemetry API to, we want you to send us logs and metrics around the platform as well as the function, right? Cool. Then in terms of buffering, all right, we're gonna have to set up some buffering values. So we have to set timeout ms. Okay, I'm gonna set that a bit later, so when I have to send some max bytes, okay, I'll set that. Then max items, I'm gonna set that a bit later as well. Okay, cool. Looks timeout ms. Cool. Then what I'm gonna do is at the top here, because now that we've got the payload here, essentially we're gonna make the call here All right, but we're gonna obviously need a URL, and we're gonna need to pass the payload as a second argument here. So what I'm gonna do at the top here is I'm going to set the base URL. So I'm gonna say const base URL, similar to the extension again. There's a URL we have to use to register for these. So I'm gonna say again, as you notice, there's a environment variable that we have to. So it's very actually it's very similar. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna copy this. Right, I'm just gonna copy this, come and put it here, and just change this because this. Okay, cool. That's all. Because it's the exact same. Not exact same, but the only thing we have to, but the format is kind of the same. So the only thing we have to do here is just change this match the schema data. Then I'm gonna say timeout ms. I'm gonna set that, and this comes from the documentation. There's nothing fancy that I did here. Max bytes 256. They multiplied that by 1024, and then we're gonna say max items 10,000. Okay, cool. Now all we have to do is then come here and say timeout ms max bytes, then max items here. Then now we're gonna make our call properly. Now all we have to do is then pass in the base URL and then get the payload ready where we're the same method, and then we're gonna say put, put, we're gonna say body, and the body is going to be JSON string of the subscription. Okay. Then we're gonna have headers where we're gonna, as normal, we're gonna have the content, set the content type to application /JSON, and then we're gonna have Lambda extension identifier here. And as you've guessed, it'll be the extension ID. Let me just make sure that we are passing this as well. So just give me this. I'll put it here. Then what we're gonna do is we're gonna say if result.status does not equal to 100, it's obviously an error, because what this API does is that it returns us a status 200. Again, that's in the documentation. What we're gonna do is we're gonna have error, and we're gonna say events subscription failed, else what we're gonna do is we're gonna console.log, and we're gonna say info events subscription successful. Cool. Then what we're going to do is we are going to return the result here. Obviously we're going to be able, so that we're able to use it should we need that to do that. Let's just check here. I'm just running through, just double checking everything I've done here. So we import node fetch, we then set up the base URL here, and then it's coming from the runtime API. We set the timeout to 1000 milliseconds, the bytes to 56 multiply, and that again comes from the documentation. Max items is 10,000. Then we start off with our function here. We pass it two arguments, which is the extension ID and the listener U. Then I'm going to call this URI. I think it just makes it more makes sense. Then we just console, then we set up the schema. We have a destination with protocol HTTP with the URI. Then we subscribe to these types here, which is function and platform. We then set the buffering here, cool, and then we do the result, essentially where we send the request here to register. So that's method put, we then stringify the subscription here, we set our headers to content type application JSON, and then Lambda extension identifier, we set that here, and then we pass it the extension ID, we then do a bit of logic here. Alright, cool, looks good. So what I'm going to do is, as per usual, I'm going to come here, let's delete that, just check if we save everything here. Okay, so I'm going to delete that, and we are going to compress it. Oh shoot, there's one other thing I forgot to do here. We need to bring it here. Shoot, I'm so glad I remembered this. So what we need to do is then we need to say await subscribe. That's all we need to do. All right. And then we need to pass the extension ID, and then we need to pass it the telemetry here. That's all we need to do. Then once we subscribe successfully, it's then going to send metrics to this to to this endpoint here. Right, we are gonna do some logic here. The fourth step we're gonna have here is logic to handle events. Right, and I'm thinking if I should just do that now. I know, let's do it in the next video. I think it's gonna get too long. Alright, so yeah, we'll stop here for now. So yeah, just get rid of that, just to make it neat. Alright, cool. What I'm gonna do then is, let's just go here, do that, and then compress. Perfect. Come here, create a new version, and then come here, create the version here. Let's check if everything is in order here. Okay, I'll sometimes feel like I'm missing something. Okay, now what we're going to do is come here and edit this. We're going to use version 4 now, which obviously has the latest code. Right, version 4 as usual. We run the test, and this is the moment of truth, isn't it? All right, so we're subscribing successfully, which is fantastic. Yeah, that's fantastic. Cool. Then in the next video, we'll listen for, we'll listen for these events here. But yeah, I think we're doing quite well here. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.